Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Circling Shallow Sports on Converge Media on this Monday, February 19th. Things continue to be interesting as we start to enter different seasons for a few teams. The Seahawks are continuing to build their coaching staff with head coach Mike Macdonald, which we'll talk about to begin the show. Of course, the Mariners are into the early parts of spring training, even though the full squad isn't designated to report until the 20th. So some guys are getting there early, which is great to see. Jewel Lloyd has a busy week at the NBA All-Star festivities. We'll get over that, which, you know, it's fun because it's like Jewel's adventure. We'll go over that. The Sounders have unveiled their new Sounders FC Center at Long Acres and have had a few trainings there and wrapped up their respective preseason there. And the Kraken might have just revived their season with a beatdown in Beantown. So we'll get to that at the end of the show because that's how it all lines up. We start with our Seahawks who, you know, it's not particularly the busy time of the offseason, but considering the fact that the Seahawks need to essentially retool their coaching staff with folks of Pete Carroll's past staff leaving to go to different places and being essentially told, hey, you can go where you want to because they weren't going to be retained by Mike Macdonald and that staff, those folks leaving and then, you know, having to replace them in their positions. So we'll just go over a few things, but first there was a rumor that, per Adam Schefter, Eric Bieniemy, who was let go by the Washington Commanders and the former offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs, Eric Bieniemy was in talks with the Seahawks for their offensive coordinator job before Ryan Grubb ultimately was hired for that. So interesting at least to think about. Bieniemy received a lot of praise during his time with Kansas City, just considering how good the Chiefs offense was under, you know, with Patrick Mahomes, obviously Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill at the time. So interesting at least to know that that was an option. I know some folks had wanted to see Bieniemy in Seattle before the news about Ryan Grubb broke, but it's interesting at least to know that that was something that might have been in the realm of possibility at some point in time. So we'll get over here to the confirmed coaching hires. On February 13th, the team officially announced 7 hires to the staff. A few of these we've already talked about, of course. Aiden Durd as the team's defensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb as the offensive coordinator, Jay Harbaugh as the special teams coordinator, Leslie Frazier as the assistant head coach. Carl Scott remains on the staff as the defensive passing game and coordinator and defensive backs coach. Scott Huff joins Grubb, leaving Alabama and coming from UW to coach the offensive line after Andy Dickerson left for Cleveland. Kirk Olivadotti will coach inside linebackers, which will be an entirely new slate for the Seahawks, considering that they don't have any of their linebackers under contract at the current point in time. And in addition to those hires on that day, General Manager John Schneider now has the title of President of Football Operations. So with Pete Carroll not in the head coaching role and taking more of an advisory role, at least that's what the organization has told us, Schneider takes over that role and kind of basically has free reign over the Seahawks and their player personnel. So that was interesting, of course. We've got a few more different coaching hires throughout the course of the week, not all of them official just yet. On the 15th of February, the team is expected to hire Rams pass game specialist Jake Peetz as their new pass game coordinator. Peetz was the offensive coordinator / quarterbacks coach at LSU in 2021, the quarterbacks coach with the Carolina Panthers in the year of 2020, and with the Oakland Raiders in 2017 as their quarterbacks coach as well. We go over here on the 16th, the team reportedly hired Frisman Jackson as the wide receivers coach. He coached the Steelers and their wideouts the last 2 seasons. He was a former Cleveland Browns wide receiver and had previously been with the Titans and the Panthers in their respective wide receiver rooms as well. Also hired on the 16th was Kennedy Polamalu as the running backs coach. Spent the last 2 seasons with the Las Vegas Raiders. I almost said Oakland Raiders, still kind of getting used to that. It still doesn't feel right. And worked previously under Pete Carroll at USC from 2001 to 2003. The last reported hire for the team's coaching staff was on the 17th, hiring Charles London as the quarterback's coach, most recently serving as the Titans quarterback's coach and pass game coordinator, having other experience with the Falcons, Bears, and the Texans. So that's in coaching staff news. There was one tidbit outside of that for the Seahawks with Geno Smith and a few other contracts getting their base salary guaranteed. The important date was February 15th. The Seahawks, John Schneider, Mike McDonald had the decision to make. Will Geno Smith remain on the roster? Doesn't necessarily guarantee what else they'll do with quarterbacks throughout the course of the offseason, whether that's the draft or free agency. But they did decide to keep Geno Smith. There was no cutting him for cap. There was no trade. Geno Smith will earn his $12.7 million contract, which is his base salary that becomes fully guaranteed. So interesting there to wonder if Geno will be the quarterback this year for Seattle. I know that when asked initially, Mike McDonald said the first few players that he talked to were Geno Smith and Drew Lock. So very interested to see how that goes, what the quarterback situation will be. I know that some folks have wanted to see Michael Penix drafted out of the University of Washington, especially considering the Ryan Grubb hire as the offensive coordinator. I personally wouldn't mind that one bit. I think it would be interesting, especially, all the stuff that happened, the UW connection. It will be interesting, especially just considering where a bunch of the UW guys go, and considering the amount of talent that's leaving the university to go into this respective draft class. If the Seahawks bite on any of them, whether it's Penix, Joy Fatuanu, a bunch of different guys could go to Seattle with the number 16 overall pick, but we'll have to see. Again, this is where stuff like the mock drafts comes into play, and you get to wait for that. I personally wouldn't mind at all to see, Penix drafted here, maybe let him learn some stuff under Geno this season and then have him take over next year. But again, that's stuff that's a ways away, and, there will be the combine and all this and that and more rumors to go from there. So that's kind of what we've got for Seahawks, with the coaching staff continuing to be filled out. Obviously the players on the field are a big aspect of a lot of things, in football and in sports as a whole. But if you get the right coaching staff to put these guys in the right positions to succeed, give them the right technique, teach them well, then they're going to do even better, maybe even raise them from what they were as a player, make them a better player. So interesting to see how these respective hires will work out, and seeing where these different coaches are coming from to join Mike McDonald's staff and join his rookie season as the Seahawks head coach in 2024. So we will move over here. Again, that's kind of what we've got as coaching hires and the Geno Smith news with the Seahawks. We go over to the Mariners, and again, it is the early part of spring training. Pitchers and catchers have reported. The 20th is supposed to be when the full squad reported for the Mariners, but a bunch of folks are already down there for Seattle, which is nice to see. With that, a lot of the local media has gone down to there as well. So we've got some news and notes here about a few of the Mariners players. So on the 15th, we found out that right-handed pitcher and reliever Gregory Santos will be a little bit behind in spring training. He's coming off an injury from last year, and he won't be throwing off the mound right away. He isn't dealing with elbow issues. He felt some soreness in his lat teres major area after throwing a bullpen in Peoria, and the Mariners decided that it was best to dial it down and kind of slow play him into spring training, which isn't a bad idea. I mean, you get this guy that you want to be a high leverage reliever. It's a win now trade. You don't really want to go out and run his arm off in spring training. So not necessarily surprising, I guess you could say. Right-handed pitcher Edward Bazardo, will also be behind in his throwing program this spring. Former Mariners reliever Tom Wilhelmsen is apparently doing some coaching. He's at the Mariners complex in uniform. It wasn't an official position quite yet, similar to how Joel Pinheiro a few years ago came out and checked things out. Wilhelmsen is observing and helping out to see if he wants to continue into a coaching path in baseball, which would be interesting to see. Obviously, a lot of Mariners fans will remember Tom Wilhelmsen from the dance he did after, the Mariners season wrapped up, around the 2010 season, I believe. I was in middle school at the time, so you'll have to forgive me. And, he kind of went a little bit viral for that. It's a GIF and everything. So it's interesting at least to see a few of the former Mariners pitchers and just former Mariners in general having involvement with the team, whether you look at guys like Mike Cameron being in the organization, Edgar Martinez hanging around batting practice throughout the course of the year, Danny Farquhar coming back and accepting an official coaching role this season, Ichiro Suzuki obviously hanging around the team all the time. So it is interesting to see former Mariners just coming around to hang out. I remember seeing Ken Griffey Jr. last year, and he said he was just kind of here to hang out. So that was fun to see. But it's nice also to know that, former Mariners do want to come back. They do want to come back to Seattle, spend time here, work with the players, and work on, helping them improve their game, helping make them better. So it'll be something to watch to see if Tom Wilhelmsen ultimately does make some sort of coaching position in the organization, but won't, pencil anything in at the moment. Outside of that, there was a somewhat interesting roster move on February 17th. The Mariners claimed right-handed pitcher Levi Stout off of waivers from the Cincinnati Reds. With that move, they had to make a roster spot on the 40-man, and recently acquired, and by recently I mean just last week, outfielder Kanan Smith-Njigba, brother of Jackson Smith-Njigba for our Seattle Seahawks, was designated for assignment. So that was tough. Just because, you were hoping for that fun story, obviously. But, Stout's a guy that helps the Mariners improve their starting pitching depth. He was a guy that some folks were really high on before he got traded in the Luis Castillo deal a few years ago. And same thing with the Santos trade. You thought, okay, you got to give up something. You got to give up some guys who could make an impact in the future in order to improve in the now. And the Reds decided they weren't going to keep up with him, and the Mariners were like, hey, you'll come back. He was acquired on Saturday, and he threw a bullpen with the Mariners on Sunday. So it'll be fun to see Levi Stout back in the organization, give the Mariners more pitching depth, more starting pitching depth, and see what, the organization and the pitching staff can do to have him as another guy that they were high on as a pitching prospect, and maybe we'll see some out of him throughout the course of his career here. So also interested to see if Kanan Smith-Njigba does clear waivers and returns to the Mariners organization. So far, it would kind of be a bummer if there was this, fun storyline of him and his brother in the same city or in the same area, because Kanan would probably be in Tacoma with the Rainiers, and to have it just last a week would be a little bit unfortunate. So we'll keep an eye on that, obviously, as well. But that's all we've got for right now. I believe we're 39 days out from opening day. Let's see, days until... Yep, 39 days until opening day on March 28th against the Boston Red Sox. And we'll get to some spring training games pretty quickly here, actually. So, again, full squad should post a report on the 20th, but a bunch of them are already down in Peoria getting some work in. Cal Raleigh's down there, Julio's there, Sam Haggerty's there, J.P. Crawford. So you can tell the guys want to get back to work, which is exciting to see. All right, so as I kind of alluded to earlier in the show, we've got the Seattle Sports Star of the Year Awards. If you don't know, it's an annual award show. This was their 89th year, hosted by the Seattle Sports Commission, our friends over at the Seattle Sports Commission, that put on events like MLB All-Star Week, like the Winter Classic, and like the upcoming 2026 Men's World Cup. And it brings out a bunch of the different athletes and stories of the past year. So we'll go over the winners with you, just to go over a few different things about who won these awards and tell you a little bit about their respective stories. So we'll start with the Sports Leader of the Year award. Had a bunch of different coaches around the Seattle area, whether it's pro sports, minor league, semi-pro, and collegiately nominated for this award. Ultimately, Seattle Reign FC head coach Laura Harvey took home this award. If you follow us with our Reign coverage, you know about Coach Harvey leading the Reign to the club's third appearance in the NWSL Championship. A bunch of different things thrown at the reins over the course of the year, with the Women's World Cup taking place, having to deal with that, trying to get Megan Rapinoe to win an NWSL championship before her retirement. Unfortunately, didn't happen, but the only pro team to reach a championship this past year, and Laura Harvey's had a great career as a coach and is well loved amongst her players. And I think Megan Rapinoe said she wasn't going to play under a different coach outside of Harvey. So she takes home the Sports Leader of the Year award, beating out Seattle Kraken head coach Dave Haxtell, UW softball head coach Heather Tarr, WSU women's basketball coach Cami Etheridge, and Seattle U men's soccer coach Pete Fewing. This one wasn't a voted on award, but it was the Paul G. Allen Humanitarian Award. Just talking about Megan Rapinoe, Rapinoe wins the top humanitarian in Seattle award as presented by Microsoft. The Seattle Sports Commission, in naming her for this award, mentioned her unapologetic attacking power for sports equity and human rights that has cemented her as a change agent for this generation. So it was interesting, obviously in her playing career with the World Cups, the long laundry list of playing achievements that Rapinoe had before her retirement. Obviously a bunch of different things that Megan has been involved in when it comes to sports equity and activism as well. And I know that, with her retirement, that won't stop. That'll only sort of continue things. Past winners of this award include Doug Baldwin Jr., Russell and Sierra Wilson, Jamal Crawford, as well as John and Tracy Schneider. The sports story of the year went to UW football. UW football did pretty well at the award show. We'll get to that further. It's been a tough past few weeks after the national championship for UW football, but there were some players from that team that went to the national title that were there to accept this award, including some guys that are returning this upcoming year. Cam Davis, Cam Fabiculanen, Michael Penix Jr. was there as he had an award, so we'll talk about that. Carson Bruner, Alfonso Tupatuola, as well as a few other Huskies as well. The current program has changed a bunch since that national title, but it was a record-breaking year for the Huskies. Michael Penix had an amazing year. The offense was lights out. The defense was able to get stops when it needed to, beating Texas in the college football playoff, and then, falling short of winning the national title to Michigan, but they were voted as the story of the year in Seattle sports, beating out the Seattle Thunderbirds, winning the 2023 WHL Championship, and the WSU women's basketball team and their remarkable run last season. And the Seattle Kraken in their playoff run as well. So that was their first playoff appearance in franchise history. We go over to Sports Star of the Year in men's sports, and I talked about Michael Penix. Won just about every award a quarterback could win in college football except for the Heisman, unfortunately, with that going to Jaden Daniels. But, it was nice to see Mike there. He was there last year at the 88th Seattle Sports Star of the Year Awards. In just his second year after transferring from Indiana, he continued to just light up the record books, and it was a very big fan favorite amongst the Huskies, throwing to the great receiving core of Roma Dunze, Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk. Was great to see Mike with that impressive arm strength, his great talent, some clutch moments, and his leadership as well, as the Huskies had that amazing season. He is preparing for the upcoming NFL draft, but again, it was nice to have him in attendance for this event, as well as with his teammates as they accept the Sports Story of the Year award. He beat out Mariners shortstop J.P. Crawford, Kraken centerman Matty Beniers, Sounders goalkeeper Stefan Fry, and UW teammate and wide receiver Rome Adunze for this award. The Sports Star of the Year for women's sports was named to Jewel Lloyd, who we'll talk about here in a little bit with the Storm segment of the show. She had to accept this virtually as she was in Indianapolis for the NBA All-Star Celebrity Game. I don't have to say a lot when it comes to Jewel and this past year. If you follow our Storm coverage, just remarkable season for Jewel, setting the single-season scoring record in WNBA history. Numerous big scoring nights, set records for the free throws in the WNBA for a single season, and 25-plus point games, winning the All-Star Game MVP. and also taking on a leadership role. With Sue Bird retiring, with Brianna Stewart leaving, it was kind of on Jewel Lloyd to take over that leadership role, and she did so. Every game, it felt like the Storm were in, outside of a few against the Las Vegas Aces here and there. And then, obviously, she continued to add to her legacy in this city by signing a 2-year extension just a day before the final game of the season. So, obviously, fans love Jewel Lloyd's loyalty, and her performance on the court doesn't hurt as well. She beat out Seattle Pacific track star and 800-meter national champion Vanessa Anatier, Seattle Reign defender Lou Barnes, Washington State basketball standout Charlize Lager-Walker, and 14-year-old Bellevue golf prodigy Angela Zhang, who qualified for the U.S. Women's Open at Pebble Beach this past year. We go over here to the Wayne Gittinger Inspirational Youth Award, going to Olivia Vitello. So Olivia Vitello is an 11-year-old who has a genetic disorder that requires weekly enzyme replacement therapy, meaning that for the last 5 years or so, she's gone to the hospital for treatment every single week. She's been taking at-home treatment as of recently. But her and her family created the I Can and I Will Run, which raised $85,000 for uncompensated care at the Seattle Children's Hospital. Excuse me. She's a big fan of UW softball and helped a few players create custom cleats this past season, and plans to be a UW softball player as well. She managed her middle school basketball team. She's a big Seahawks and Seattle Reign fan. And I can tell you by speaking with Megan at the award show, she's a bright young lady, and hopefully excited to see her on the UW softball team when that time comes. So really nice to speak with Olivia. We go to the Sports Equity and Inclusion Award. It was presented to our friends at Rise Above. If you are familiar with the Converge platforms, obviously you know that Rise Above has been featured multiple times throughout the course of the past few years. To accept the award was Jackie McCormick. If you don't know, Rise Above is an organization that uses basketball to change the lives of Native American youth and help them build life skills. And they were given that Sports Equity and Inclusion Award. The goal for Rise Above has been to empower Native youth to lead healthy lives despite the challenges presented to them by delivering education, prevention skills, and mentorship through programs tailored to their respective needs. So it was really cool. I've met Jackie before and talked to her and seen Rise Above's work. I believe Converge was out at a UW volleyball game this past year to capture Rise Above's work as well. So it made a lot of sense to see Rise Above earn that award. In terms of the Keith Jackson Media Excellence Award, it was awarded to Larry Stone and Jim Capel, two legendary Seattle sports journalists in their own right. After 27 years with the Seattle Times, Larry Stone, who I've had the pleasure of meeting a few times, retired this past year, with his last events coming in the month of November. He's become a recognizable face to many across the Seattle area and even beyond that. Jim Capel, who passed away this past year, was also a Seattle sports media legend, spending 17 years with ESPN, finishing his writing career with The Athletic. In his career, Jim covered 20 World Series, a half dozen Olympic Games, and was a University of Washington alum. The Royal Brome Sports Legend Award went to Seattle Totems legend Guile Fielder. It was presented by Alaska Airlines. If you don't know, Guile Fielder is a legendary hockey player who now has an award named after him that the Seattle Kraken give out every year at the end of the season, given to a player that best exemplifies Fielder's perseverance, hustle, and dedication over the course of a season. Yanni Gourde in year one and Jaden Schwartz last year are the two winners of the award. Fielder was a longtime captain of the Seattle Totems and is the oldest living former pro hockey player from a team in the city of Seattle. He was the first professional hockey player at any level to score 2,000 points, as was a 6-time WHL MVP. So that was all of the winners from this past week's event, the Seattle Sports Star of the Year Awards. As I mentioned, the 89th annual, I think, the award show is one of the longest running award shows in the nation, actually, with that. It's always a really fun event to get all of these different athletes from this city, all these different teams that we cover, in fact, into one room and kind of see them interact. I know I talked with KJ Wright, and he said he wanted to meet Megan Rapinoe. He hadn't been able to do that. Just to see all of them in one room, talking to each other, working with each other, and just so many great stories, even in the lead up to the event, learning of a few different folks like Angela, like Olivia. Was great to learn their stories, and to see them honored as well is just amazing. So that's that, and we'll head over to the Storm segment of the show now.
Megan Rapinoe, this is an incredible honor. I mean, I don't know where to start, but first of all, how do you feel about tonight? I mean, you're receiving an award. You received a lot of awards in your career. What does this mean to you?
Oh, it means so much, to be honest. This really is home in so many different ways. I was just saying on the Fox 13 set, it's been home for my career and somewhere where I really feel like I settled in and matured and found the best of my game here with the Reign. It's been my literal home, place I come back to, this calm place. Flying into here, this is like flying into no other place in the world. I found Sue here, so I found that heart home. So it feels really good, and honestly, to be honored by this award, which of course is on field, but a lot of it has to do with off field and just knowing the legacy that Paul Allen and his family left and his foundation. To be honored in this way, I'm blushing about it. So it's very special. So, I mean, folks can kind of tell, from following you on social, but what have you been up to? I mean, I know there's so much that yourself you've talked about wanting to do. I was at that press conference at that last match and talking about, we don't have a warning, so talking about injuring yourself, using some words I don't know if I can use. I don't fucking care, really. But, I mean, I know Sue's talked about it. I know there's a production company that she's been involved. What has Megan Rapinoe been up to? Yeah. A lot of rest, to be honest. I have taken a lot of rest, and I think the injury has provided even more space to do that. Especially the first 6 weeks, really, I was in the apartment just chilling. I couldn't really do much, and I was pretty inhibited. Got back on my feet, got back on my scooter, did a little bit of that. Was able to, honestly, I've been able to do things I never would have been able to do, like go to Jess and Z's wedding. Take just a quick 3-day trip. I've been to a few events with Sue just as Sue's girlfriend and being able to be there for her. Been to a couple games, traveled a little bit, but honestly, I was pretty intentional towards the end of my season, knowing I was going in retirement. I wanted a little time to rest, and now we're kicking back up again. This is kind of the first of a string of events that we have going the next couple months, and feels good to be back out in the world a little bit. Absolutely. I just saw some of those Instagram stories of you on the scooter, and I was like, that's Megan. Of course it is. I mean, I tore it up. I tore it up. I don't know what to say. And to go back to it, you talked about Seattle being a home in multiple ways. I was just speaking with KJ Wright, who wants to meet you. So if you see KJ Wright, make sure you go bother him. It's another bald head to look at. At least for you, from, further down the West Coast, what aspects of this area have just stuck out to you where you want to keep coming back and want to stay involved? Because I know you mentioned, with the Reign and the Sail of the Reign, you want to be involved. Sue's been involved with the Storm as well. Why, for you, is that something that you do want to be a part of and want to be a part of in this area? Sometimes I just feel like home chooses you, and this is what that felt like. I've, talked really openly about how I got here and how I was pissed to come here because I went to school in Portland. I was like, how am I not being placed in Portland? I was so mad. But coming here, meeting Bill and Teresa Predmore, who own the team, originally the original founders of the team, those are family to me. Having Laura Harvey as my coach for almost my entire career here, growing up here, I feel like I really became an adult here. Some of the most trying times of my life were here. Some of the best times of my life were here. I met Sue here, obviously. So there's just something about flying back into this city, the way it glistens, especially in the summer. It's a little dreary in the winter, but that's okay too. There's just something special about being here. I think it's all the memories and the people, and just knowing that, I think I found myself here too. So
It's a lot of levels to why we love it so much here. I think we'll always call this place home and always spend a lot of time here. And then obviously our teams are here. I mean, I can't imagine really rooting for anybody else. It just feels right to continue to be a part of this incredible sports landscape, and especially our two teams.
To that point, are you able to reveal anything about how you'd want to be involved with the Reign, or you just know that you want to be involved somehow, whoever that ultimately falls into place? Is there anything you've got in mind, or?
Not specifically. I mean, I always want to be able to hit Laura and have her do exactly what I think. She rarely did. No, I mean, I just want to be involved. I feel like for me, my most impactful involvement would be stuff off the field. I mean, I love the game, and I feel like obviously I was a great player in so many ways, but I think there's people that are a lot more qualified. I feel like what I can do off the field business-wise, and just kind of tapping into sort of like the essence of the team, essence of the city, and how to continue to grow this into something that we really feel like it could be, which is huge. You know, the last game, home game that we played in here, 30-something thousand. Last playoff game a couple years ago, 20,000. Like, I think that can be the norm, and I feel like I can be a part of speaking that into existence and be one of the architects of that.
Does Seattle have the two best men's and women's crests in the country? I mean, I'm asking someone who's pretty stylish, so I just
pretty fire.
Want to get that opinion.
Pretty fire. Pretty fire.
If I had to put you in a different uniform of any of our Seattle teams, who would you pick and why? I've asked Lou. She said she'd step onto the court for the Storm. Do you have an idea of what you'd want to do?
No question. I'm going Storm. I can't wear 15 because, legend LJ. We're not taking the 15 down from the rafters to put it on me. I know that's for sure. I got 6 fouls every game. Definitely, I'm wild, so I'll do some wild stuff. I'm like the worst possible version of Steph Curry.
Okay.
Whatever that, what's the worst? Steph's obviously the best version of Steph Curry. What's the worst? That's me with maybe 2 points a game and 6 fouls.
Well, I would love to see that. I know they do Champions of Change. Maybe when you feel like it, we'll get you out to that. But
yeah, once I get my Achilles right, I'm out there.
So we move over here from our Mariners to the Storm segment of the show. And while there was excitement the last few weeks with the signing of Skylar Diggins-Smith, Nneka Nwumeke, there wasn't anything in terms of signing, or free agency over the past week for the Storm, as they still are looking to add a few players to fill out the roster. As we mentioned, it will likely be an 11-player roster as opposed to the WNBA's maximum of a 12-player roster. But we do have some news over, what was the NBA's All-Star weekend break festivities, as Storm guard, nicknamed the Gold Mamba, Jewell Loyd, was pretty busy. On the 12th, she was inducted into the Niles West Athletic Hall of Fame. So Jewell already getting some recognition for the career that she's had and her accomplishments. She was inducted there on the 12th. On the 15th, she virtually accepted her Women's Sports Award at the Seattle Sports Star of the Year Awards. We were there in Seattle for that, but with Jewell winning the award and her being in Indianapolis for the NBA All-Star break, she had to accept it virtually, which was interesting. Just considering the course of the year that she had, it makes a ton of sense that she won that award. We'll talk about that a little bit later. On the 16th, the day after, she helped Team Shannon Sharp win the NBA All-Star Celebrity Game, hitting a few 4-pointers in that game, the Ruffles All-Star Celebrity Game. And then later that night, Lloyd and Jackie Young teamed up in the Hennessy 2v2 showcase against Natasha Cloud and Chelsea Gray, winning that one 15-14. Lloyd hit the fall-away three-pointer to win that one. So a busy past few days for Jewell Loyd. Nice to see her having some fun there throughout it, whether it's, winning awards, being inducted into the Niles West Athletic Hall of Fame, and then being part of the festivities for NBA All-Star Weekend. Pretty fun for Jewell. Just really with the awards and the accomplishments, obviously very earned. We look at what Jewell Loyd did last year and the remarkable effort that she put in and night out. And it just makes a ton of sense, especially with the Women's Sports Award at the Seattle Sports Star of the Year Award. So that's all we've got when it comes to the Storm. We move over here to the Sounders. And now the Sounders, there's a lot that took place with the Sounders over the past week. It was busy for them as they opened up their new training facility of Longacres. So instead of going over the preseason matches that they played against Sacramento Republic FC first, we'll look at the unveiling of the practice facility. So on the 13th, the Sounders officially unveiled Sounders FC Center at Longacres, taking over 50,000 square feet of a building, 4 full-size fields. It will encompass the Sounders themselves and their players, and we'll talk about the facilities for that in a second here, but their business and operations staff, the Tacoma Defiance, and the Sounders Academy will all call this one facility home. So they move on from Starfire, which is just a really short drive away, actually, from their new facility of Longacres. The Reign will take over that space, and they're working on changing the banners and the logos there. And the Sounders now move over into this new facility where, as I mentioned, the Defiance, their business and operations staff, and the Academy join them all under one roof in that one building. So we'll look at some of the facilities that we saw on the 13th. The entire first floor, essentially most of the first floor, is dedicated to the first team, so we'll look at that. There was the gymnasium that opens right into is one of 2 rooms that opens up into the main first team field. Opens right there. It's got this nice garage door that opens up there. You can see the custom plates that they've got. We'll move over to another one here. Just a huge gymnasium, like professional gym. And obviously it makes sense. It's just funny to think about, considering how the Sounders used to, at Starfire, have to do their weight training in a tent outside. So whether it was the cold early months of the season or even the later months of the season, having to deal with that because obviously the tent doesn't keep all of the elements out. Just kind of funny to think about the different comparisons from there into where we're at now with this Longacres facility. Also included was the Players Lounge. That's the other room on the first floor that's connected right out to the first team training field. It's got a kitchen staff that will provide 2 meals per day for the club. There's a barber shop that's connected to it, like a custom barber chair and mirror for Christian Roldan, who is the team barber, and took a lot of pride in that. Christian did. As well as on the walls, there's a bunch of Sounders memorabilia, but in addition to that Sounders memorabilia, there's some stuff from all of the pro teams in Seattle except for the Seawolves. So there's stuff from the Reign and the double headers. There was the Kraken Winter Classic logo. There was some old Seahawks posters. There was a Ken Griffey Jr. Sports Illustrated cover. So it was kind of cool to see that and to see the Sounders paying some homage to the different pro teams in the area. Connected to both of those rooms was some of the recovery amenities, including, as you can see in the photo on your screen, a sauna with a television built into it. There's some cryotherapy in there. There's cold tubs. There's a bunch of different tables for different recovery and such. It's safe to say that this is a massive upgrade to what the Sounders had when it came to weight training and recovery as well. And it's just kind of funny to think about how well the franchise has done using Starfire in that regard, and to think about what sort of amenities that they had at Starfire. So that's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of funny. And I was just definitely thinking about that as we got that tour. And then we get to what actually the entire first floor is built around, is the first team locker room. So you can kind of see here in this photo, you've got the new crest up on the ceiling, the incredible LEDs that can change to the uniform that the team is wearing that respective day. All the lockers are all placed strategically so that veterans aren't sitting by guys that they've known for years. They're sitting by teammates that they aren't as familiar with per se, so that they can continue to learn about each other, which is really fun to think about. it was the locker room itself was amazing. In not so important news, it was apparently Christian Roldan said that the club is working on getting a ping pong table into there. So there's that. He also petitioned for a pickleball space. So there's that. As if you see all this stuff and you're like, oh, wow, do they need more? I kid, I joke. But yes, the entire first floor is built around the first team locker room, which is pretty remarkable to think about. And, as I mentioned, this entire facility is just such a massive upgrade from where they were at with Starfire. Obviously, you pay homage to where you've spent time, but just the massive upgrade in terms of, the different fields and being able to keep the Defiance and the Academy and your business staff all under one roof is pretty remarkable to think about. So that was on the 13th. On the 15th, the club unveiled their 50th anniversary kit. We'll go straight into the photos here. We showed it a few weeks ago. There was the leaks via EAFC, and there was some backlash. Most of the fans did not like it. You can see it now in these pictures. After seeing the photos, I'm more of a fan of it, truthfully. And as you can see in those photos, the blue aqua shorts kind of help make the uniform as a whole better, in my opinion. So it is labeled as the anniversary kit, obviously, with this year being the 50th season for the Sounders. It's going to take that. It's that anniversary year, the club's golden anniversary year. It's supposed to serve as a bold fusion of tradition and the future for the kit. So we'll move over here to a little bit closer of a photo with Albert Rusnak. In addition to announcing the kit on the 15th, the club announced the launch of their 50th anniversary campaign, filling the season with quote-unquote exciting elements that pay homage to the club's first 50 years while laying the foundation for the next 50. So it's going to be interesting to see what different things that the Sounders do throughout the course of the year to celebrate those 50 years. But we'll focus on the kit here. You can see the stripes that go up and down it, that new rave green that the club is using. I'm not the biggest fan of stripes personally, but we'll see how that will go. I don't know. The blue works, and especially the shorts, in my opinion, work. Here's a quote from Sounders FC President of Business Operations, Hugh Weber. Celebrating our 50th anniversary is a milestone reflecting decades of determination and perseverance while launching our refreshed brand identity built to reflect the next 50 years for the franchise, along with a new state-of-the-art home in Renton, creates a generational moment for the club. The 2024 campaign will be a singularly unique time to celebrate with longtime supporters while engaging new fans to the sport and the club. Yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you think about it. I'm okay with it. I think it's growing on me. I think I have to see it in person, be able to look at it, kind of see how it hits the light. I personally think, someone mentioned it to me on Twitter, that seeing it in person and in the sunlight during those summer days will be great. And again, the light blue shorts really help me. Heritage Aqua is what it's called. The green is the new rave green as its base color. So, and it goes along obviously with the crest, the new crest, and the revealing of that this past year. So, I don't know. Let me know what you think about it. I'm a fan of it personally. I know not everybody is. Some folks say they hate it in our poll that we ran, but I'm okay with it. So now we will get to the two friendlies that they played. On February 17th there were two friendlies against USL Championship side Sacramento FC. Sacramento FC has had recent success in USL Championship playoffs as of recently, so they're nothing to scoff at per se. But it was a little bit surprising to see in the first of the two scrimmages taking place. The first one started at about 12:30 on the 17th. That the Sounders were shut out by a score of 1-0. This squad was mainly all first-team choices. We'll get to some injury updates here in a second. But just they generated more than a few chances throughout the course of the match, and they weren't able to finish them. If that's frustrating because you've heard that before, you have. The Sounders generated a lot last year and weren't able to put those chances away, and that was a big problem for them. They led expected goals in the MLS for a while, and that doesn't matter unless you're actually putting the ball in the back of the net. Sacramento got their goal in the first half just right about at halftime on a free kick that got through the wall that the Sounders players had created and tucked itself into the near post just out of the reach of Stefan Frei. And in the second half, there were a few scheduled substitutions. Javier Arriaga came on for Jackson Reagan, who had been dealing with an injury the past few weeks. And shoot, I forgot who else came on. Oh, yes, Paul Rothart came on. So, I don't know. The main focus that came out of that first match for me was the struggles offensively to finish, because there were more than a few chances that they generated, some dangerous balls in the box, but none of them were truly open. Sacramento had them decently well covered, and just the finishing wasn't there for that first team side. Our first photo of the match here, I went with this Jackson Reagan one just because you can kind of see him moving up. It's also nice to see Jackson, after there was some concern about his injury, he is back to full training. Around 2:30 or so, the Sounders went with a more second-choice lineup. This was also interesting because the first half of this one was against Sacramento. The second half, Sacramento left. I think that was by design. And the Sounders second-choice lineup played the Tacoma Defiance lineup. So that was unique. So the Sounders, you can see, win this one by a score of 4-0. Player of the match was forward Raul Rui Diaz, 1 goal, 1 assist. The main takeaways that I took were from this: Pedro de la Vega played in this match. He kind of played on the left wing, but kind of had freedom to move about both wings, truthfully. He generated more than a few chances. He looked dangerous on the ball. He looked confident as well, and it was nice to know that, especially considering when the team was leaving Spain, he was dealing with a hamstring injury of sorts. He did score a goal. Some combination play between him and Raul Rui Diaz ultimately led to Raul drawing a penalty, and it seemed like Raul was going to take it at first, but ultimately he gave it up to De La Vega, who slotted it to the keeper's right side. And he only played 35 minutes. That was by design. We were told that by Brian Schmetzer before that second match. He looked good. He looked really good. He looked as advertised. And you're kind of excited to think about, what he will look like with the first team, what he will look like integrating with guys like Christian Roldan, maybe feeding service into Jordan Morris, So we'll see more of that. Even Raul's goal. Raul also looked pretty dangerous. He looked hungry for goals. He did score one before the half, getting a through ball and some nice fancy footwork to beat the keeper and tap one home. He also did assist a goal. John Bell scored. So much better fortune in that second match. But ultimately, with preseason, I'm more so looking at individual performances. Again, Pedro de la Vega certainly impressed. I did say that I would mention some injury-related notes. Midfielder João Paulo did not play in either of these, as he's still dealing with a hip injury of sorts. Brian Schmetzer did say he should be good to go for the season opener against LAFC. When talking about Alex Roldan and Yeimar Gomez Andrade, Schmetzer did not sound so sure about them. I believe, in fact, he did go on to allude to the fact that Yeimar probably won't play in that match against LAFC, and that Cody Baker will probably play right back in filling in for Alex Roldan. So not great. They're not going to start out with those two guys, but Cody Baker has shown some positive signs throughout the course of his playing time with the Sounders. And you've got Nathan, who you signed in the offseason as a center back. Nathan and Javier Arriaga as two other center backs that you can put alongside Jackson Reagan in case Yeimar is not able to go, which it does sound like he won't be able to go. But João Paulo, obviously a massive part of the Sounders team, someone who's been essentially a team MVP the last few years with this quality of play, and it sounds like he will be good to go for this upcoming match, which is nice to hear about. So a lot of folks were pretty upset with the first team side loss in that first scrimmage. I'm not super worried about it. It is frustrating to see the lack of finishing, just because it's something that's plagued them for the last season and a half, dating back to after they won CCL. The second half of that season was just rough. They really couldn't generate much. Last year they generated a ton, and they were able to finish. And you don't want that to continue over now. Like, it's great to generate these chances and make it exciting, but you got to be able to score them, right? That's the whole name of the game. But just considering the fact that it was a split squad sort of action, and that you were missing guys like João Paulo, like Yamar, like Alex Roldan, I'm not fully concerned. It's frustrating, of course, and they need to play better. They need to play up to their potential, as Brian Schmetzer said, but I'm not ringing the alarm in preseason, right? Like, so there was that. There's also a report confirmed by Jeremiah Oshan of Sounder at Heart on February 16th that the Sounders are trying to acquire Lanús defender Brian Aguilar via loan. So the same club that Pedro de la Vega came from, he would go to the Tacoma Defiance on loan with a option to buy, and he may train with the first team. That's not officially confirmed yet, but it sounds like that is currently in the works. So we'll see if that plays out. We have an upcoming match. The Sounders start their regular season this Saturday, February 24th at LAFC. So they're defending Western Conference champions. It won't be easy. If you remember to last season in the playoffs, the Sounders were bounced by LAFC in the second round. So frustrating to, get bounced. But as I wrote about in looking forward to this match, if you're going to contend like the Sounders are hoping to this season, you're going to need to beat the big guys, and LAFC is one of those clubs. So we move over here to the Kraken segment of the show, and things were looking great the last few weeks, I'll tell you that. You go off from that long break with the All-Star break and then the bye week for the Kraken, and it was just kind of tough. You were hoping everybody was kind of sitting on pins and needles, like these guys need to get back into action. They need to reinsert themselves into the wild card hunt. And then the few games that they got immediately out of that break after losing the game against the San Jose Sharks right before the break, falling to the Flyers, and then falling to the New Jersey Devils to begin things here. And you're like, is it over? Are they going to have to sell at the deadline? Is this season a wash? Are they going to have to start moving on from some fan favorites from the expansion draft? That February 12th loss at the New Jersey Devils, a 1-3 decision. Our player of the game, defenseman Will Borgen, who scored the only goal of the game for Seattle, 1 goal, 1 point, 1 shot, and 4 hits. Seattle really just not able to generate enough until it was too late. Some mistakes ultimately lead to New Jersey's goals, and it's just another loss to add to it that Seattle couldn't do enough offensively, which has been a decent theme throughout the course of the year. So after that loss to the Devils, which is the first game of a back-to-back, you're wondering, are they going to be able to pull themselves out of it? Can they get back into it? They've lost some ground in the wild card hunt. They were closer to it when we got to the break, and they could have been even closer at the break had they beaten the Sharks, but they didn't do that. There wasn't a lot of good happening with this team. We get to the second game of a back-to-back, and back-to-backs are tough, man. I mean, you think about that. The Kraken didn't look great offensively against the Devils. Are they going to be able to do it against the Islanders? It was stressful, but they were able to beat the New York Islanders by a score of 2-1 in the shootout. So it was a 1-1 game. We go into the shootout, and the Kraken beat the Islanders. It was a tough one. This was Philip Grubauer's first game since I believe it was December 9th. So it was a great performance from Gruby to show up there. He was perfect in the shootout. He stonewalls the Islanders. He makes 26 saves. He is our key player of the game. 26 saves, a .963 save percentage, perfect in the shootout. And the Kraken win this one. Matty Benier scores the lone goal in regulation for Seattle. He gets slammed into the boards pretty hard. It looks like he was going to be hurt and he was going to have to leave the ice. The puck goes down to the Kraken end of the ice. Jared McCann is ultimately able to find Matty on the other end of it because he sees that this play is happening, and Benier scores to give the Seattle the early lead. Kyle Palmieri scored the New York goal on a power play that was kind of a soft penalty call against Yanni Gourde. And so it ties this one up. So this game probably shouldn't have even gone to overtime and then the shootout itself. But that's not how these things go. We go to the shootout. Trying to see if I can find the shootout order here. But Philip Grubauer was perfect into it. Tomas Tatar scored the only goal for the Kraken in the shootout. Matty Beniers missed his shot. Jordan Eberle missed his shot. And then, let's see here. Yes, Oliver Wahlstrom had his shootout shot stopped. Bo Horvat has his. And then Matthew Barzal, former Seattle Thunderbird Matthew Barzal, who's got all the talent in the world. Would love him in Seattle as a Kraken. Back in Seattle, that would be. Had his shot stopped by Grubauer, and the Kraken to get both points. They kind of revived themselves a little bit, but they were facing a tough test to end out the week a few days later. February 15th at the Boston Bruins. Boston, they win the President's Trophy last year. They had a historic season last year. Couldn't turn it into a Stanley Cup, and a lot of folks kind of expected them to fall off. They haven't really done that, but it doesn't really matter to Seattle. It's a tough team still, and you need to continue to find your way back into the wild card hunt. Seattle goes into Boston. They do give up the first goal as David Pastrnak cleans up a messy play in front of the crease of Joey Decord. And the Kraken score the final 4 goals unanswered to win this one. It's a big win. They close out that road trip, that 4-game road trip back from the All-Star break with 4 points in those 2 games. Our player of the game number 1 is forward Matty Beniers. 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points, a 3+- 1 shot and 1 hit. So the one of 2 guys from that sort of area is able to make a massive impact. The other guy who did was Joey Decord, our second player of the game, 36 saves and a .973 save percentage. Truthfully, Seattle got some luck in this game. The Bruins hit a few pipes and just narrowly missed a few goals, but they won't ask you how they got the win. It's just the fact that they did get the win, and it adds 2 more points. So it was frustrating. It was frustrating, that San Jose game we talked about, obviously that one at length. The Flyers game as well was a frustrating one. The Devils one, it was getting tough to watch. It was like, okay, they're going to have to sell. It just seemed like how this team was trending, how it was looking. It was tough. And then, especially even going into that game against the Islanders in the back-to-back. The Islanders haven't been particularly great this season, but you still didn't really have the best feeling considering how they had performed the night before. It's the back-to-back. Players are going to be tired. Seattle goes out and, they kind of grind it out. Again, they shouldn't have had to go to overtime. It shouldn't have had to gone to a shootout. But they get the 2 points. They don't sit and they don't mope about it. And then they go into Boston and beat the Bruins by 3 goals, which is, not an easy feat to accomplish, even if it was their 3rd loss in a row, and knocked them out of first place in their division. So it's a big win, and it gives you some momentum going into what is, I believe, 9 games left. 9 or 8 games before the trade deadline, the final day of the trade deadline. So it'll be big, and we've got a piece of team news that kind of relates to the trade deadline. So we'll go over a few different other things. On the 13th, forward Pierre-Edouard Bellemare was activated off injured reserve. So he's back. He has been practicing in full with the team, but he has not gotten back into the lineup just yet. And then defenseman Brian Dumoulin was hurt in the game against the Devils. On a back check. It was kind of like one of those butt checks where the skater checks backwards. And Dumoulin kind of took the worst of it, sent him into the boards. He left that game immediately and was ruled out pretty quickly with a lower body injury. He would miss that game against the Islanders with that lower body injury, but did return against the Bruins. And he's been back practicing with the team as well. So nice that you avoided an injury. This is one of those few times throughout the course of this year that the Kraken have been fully healthy. Knock on wood. I don't have to deal with any more of those injuries. So we get to it. On the 12th, Elliot Friedman of Hockey Night in Canada, he breaks a lot of different news around the NHL, had a quote in his 32 Thoughts podcast that kind of breaks down different, pieces of news and rumors throughout the entire NHL. He said, "I think that the Kraken take a run at trying to sign him. We'll see where that goes, but I would be surprised if they didn't at least try to sign him first." This is regarding Jordan Eberle. A few of the veteran forwards for the Kraken have been rumored throughout, the NHL ahead of the trade deadline, especially when the team has struggled. it's been Jordan Eberle. Alex Wenberg has also been in some of those talks, considering the need for defensive centermen throughout the course of the NHL. Justin Schultz is also a guy who's garnered some potential interest. But Jordan Eberle is interesting. To hear from Friedman that the Kraken might say, hey, we're going to sign you to a longer-term deal. Well, probably not longer-term. We're going to sign you because he's a free agent after this year. Eberle, before this season started in the preseason, he expressed his interest to stay in Seattle. He says he does want to be here, and he had made that intention clear to the front office. I don't know if there's any stock to take of it, but on Sunday's practice, he was seen with his daughter and his wife at practice, and brought his daughter into the team meetings. So did Brian. Well, Brian Dumoulin's kid was at practice, and Pierre-Edouard Bellemar's kids were at practice as well. So I don't know if there's anything to take stock into, but it's interesting to think about. Jordan Eberle's 1,000th game would also be during the month of March, just after the trade deadline. So it's going to be a strenuous upcoming few weeks for Kraken fans as they worry about the trade deadline and just for the results as well. I mean, we look here at the upcoming schedule, and that'll include this upcoming week that we'll talk about. So we'll talk about the upcoming week, obviously, but looking past that week, you'll have to play the Bruins again at home. You'll play the Penguins, who you lost to on a road trip. And then there's three more games. There's 3 games in the month of March before the deadline date, which is March 8th. You have to play the Oilers, who you've struggled against throughout the course of your existence. You have to play the Flames, who are above you in the playoff seeding, and the Winnipeg Jets, who have been one of the best teams in the NHL. So it's not at all going to be an easy stretch for the Kraken as they try to climb themselves back into the playoff picture. But, I mean, I didn't really expect them to beat the Bruins, truthfully. So, we'll look at here the upcoming games for Seattle, which aren't easy either. But you look at that early start to March, Edmonton on the 2nd, Calgary on the 4th. It's a back-to-back. They play the Jets on the 5th on the road. They have a few days before their next game on the 8th, which is trade deadline day, which is also against the Jets. So the month of March does not start off very easy for the Kraken. They also played the Knights twice in that month. You'll play the Stars. The Predators are also in the hunt, so it's not going to be easy whatsoever. But again, they kind of have found some life in the last few games in the wins against the Islanders and the Bruins, so maybe they're able to keep that going. So we look ahead. By the time that you're seeing this game will have happened. It is the 19th versus the Detroit Red Wings. It is a 12:30 p.m. start because of President's Day. This game is on ESPN, so be aware of that. It is on ESPN. It is not on Root Sports, so if you go to Root Sports looking for it, I cannot help you. 12:30 p.m. Pacific time puck drop. It is also Lunar New Year night for the Kraken, and we'll show you the Kraken S logo and the anchors specially designed there. They obviously can't wear this in warm-ups because of the NHL's decision this past offseason, so frustrating, obviously, but really cool to see the design here. We'll look at a few different things. Artist Julia King Robinson, unique vision, was inspired by the dragons in Korean art from the Joseon dynasty and motivated by her kids' enthusiasm about this partnership with the Kraken, which is very nice to hear about. They'll have some fun stuff for Lunar New Year night. The Mac Phi Kung Fu Club at pregame and intermission. In-arena DJ is DJ Sopagi. And the anthem singer is young Yolanda Yee, who we've actually seen at a few different events, notably Mariners. So that is on the 19th. The Red Wings as well. They're not going to be an easy team to beat. They've had a really strong year as well. February 22nd, this is all at home, by the way. February 22nd versus the Vancouver Canucks is a 7 o'clock start. Vancouver, they've been one of the best teams in the National Hockey League as well. So that's not going to be an easy one. The Kraken already beat the Canucks up in Vancouver early in the year, so it's going to be another fun rematch. Again, Vancouver has been really great this year. Quinn Hughes has been one of the best players in the entire league. And then on February 24th versus the Minnesota Wild, which is on that Saturday, the Kraken will play the Minnesota Wild at home. And it won't be just any game, as the Kraken will be wearing their Winter Classic jerseys. The first of 2 times outside of the Winter Classic itself that they'll be wearing these jerseys. The other time is March 24th against the Montreal Canadiens at home. So that'll be fun to see that. See the Winter Classic jerseys back in action as well. Minnesota, they're a team that's trying to push for the playoffs in the Western Conference as well. So none of these games are going to be easy for the Kraken as they look to get back into the playoffs and they look to push further and further up the wild card standings. So that's what we've got for this past week in Seattle sports. The Reign were pretty quiet. They've returned back to training at Starfire. But outside of that, I mean, it's relatively quiet on the Reign side of things. As I mentioned, the Seahawks are filling out their coaching staff and working on that. The Mariners are at spring training, and they're adding on they added Levi Stout. They might add a few different things, and we've got some earlier reports from players there. The Storm, Drew Lloyd had a busy week. The Sounders officially unveil Long Acres as their new facility, which is very exciting to see. And they're kind of trying to tune some things up before their season opener on Saturday, and then the Kraken as well. They kind of found some life, kind of revived their season a little bit as they work towards the trade deadline, as they work towards getting back into a wild card spot. So until I see you next week, take care of yourselves, be well, and do whatever you can to make today a great day.